Hi Spurs troops, welcome to the Steve Perryman Podcast. A bit different this week because I did this interview on Monday evening with the Spurs Show. Those people were Leigh, Theo, Delaney, and it was myself and Julie Welch talking about this new 1981 Spurs book. So I've latched onto the back of it and I'm going to present it to you. So I hope you enjoy it. And, of course, come on, you Spurs.
Glory, glory, Tottenham Hotspur. Glory, glory, Tottenham Hotspur. Glory, glory, Tottenham Hotspur. And the Spurs go marching on.
Hello, welcome to a very, very special Spurs show for you all around the world. It's the hands across the nation. It's like a joint recording. Not only will you hear this on the normal Spurs Show feed, for those of you that listen to the wonderful Steve Perryman Podcast, you're getting that as well. So I better introduce myself in case you've no idea who this is. My name is Mike Leigh. I'm co-host of the Spurs Show, a Tottenham podcast that's been droning on since 2007 now.
And that's why they all know you. Don't
Exactly.
make out they don't.
It's exactly. And joining me tonight is my co-host of many years, Theo Delaney. How are you, Theo?
I'm good, Mike. Good to see you, mate.
Nice to see you too. And also joining us, a woman who's been on both podcasts and is now on both podcasts again. It's almost like when Steve, who's coming on in 81, no, Steve Archibald, when he did Oz's Dream on Top of the Pops, he also was doing the Scotland song as well with B.A. Robinson. It's a bit like that tonight when you're doing two for the price of one. Julie Welch joins us. How are you, Julie?
Well, I'm still waiting to see if Porro is going to sign.
We all are.
I'm waiting to see who we're going to get.
There's more chance. Let's face it. There's more chance of Zorro signing than Porro, probably.
Hey!
Come on, he's here all week. Try the veal. I know. This is what it's like being a Tottenham fan. It's the hope that kills you.
If we can borrow something, we might get him.
If we can borrow, we can get Toro.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Is that his name? Porro, that's it.
And
Exactly.
that was the sound of a man. Well, he needs literally no introduction, but I'll give him one anyway. Mr. Tottenham himself, Steve Perryman. How are you, Steve?
Very well, thank you, Mike. Lovely to speak to you. And you're looking. You've got a glow on. You're obviously in Portugal, and we're all freezing here. But apart from that.
Yeah, it's been sunny, 13 degrees. Can't complain. Well, we've got lots to cover, and the main thing we're going to talk about tonight is Julie and Steve's wonderful book, 81, another fantastic coffee book from VSP Publishing. And one of the reasons we're doing it, we've got an offer for all of you listening. For those who don't know, there's two editions to the book. There's the standard book, which, I mean, the book's pretty much the same, but there's the standard book and then there's the special one, the one in the leather style box with a print signed by Ricky Vere. Also, there's copies that's signed by Steve as well. And you can get either copy at shop.visionsp.co.uk. Don't worry if you haven't got a pen. This will be on the link in the pod description. Just click the link. And for everyone listening, when you go into go to pay, there'll be a discount box. If you type in TSS, short for the Spurs Show, you will get 20% off not only this book, but other VSP books. And obviously, Julie's written the wonderful, the official biography of Tottenham Hotspur, Steve Perryman of Spur Forever. There's the Spurs Shirt coffee table book, the Lane, the 61 book, Boys from White Hart Lane. So many brilliant Tottenham books. 20% off the lot by putting in TSS. Before we talk about the book, Steve, there was obviously a game at the weekend. We marched into the FA Cup fifth round. We played Preston North End. Not a great... I mean, my father tells me going up there in '66 when Tottenham was still really in their pomp and Jimmy Greaves scored, and we lost 2-1. And he said he'd never heard such a quiet car coming all the way back, probably then on the A1, I would have thought. So it was a potential banana skin, wasn't it? But we kind of handled it, I thought, quite professionally in the end, didn't we?
Yeah, I was given a talk locally on Saturday. The timing was good. I do local talks because no petrol, no traffic, no stress, no this and no that. And then my friend up in Huddersfield decided to open a spa within his lifestyle offices.
Right.
And it was going to open on the Friday.
Right.
And out of loyalty, I had to go. Of course I did. So got up Saturday morning and had to drive 3.5 hours to get to my local talk.
Wow.
Which normally involves no stress, no traffic, no petrol.
You must
no
be driving
hotel.
very quickly, 3.5 hours from where I know you live. That's some going, isn't it, to Huddersfield?
I've moved from Devon. Do you know I'm in Wiltshire now?
No. Oh, there
Yes.
you are. Well, that's probably why it's
yes.
slightly quicker.
So what I did was I watched the first half, got picked up by someone, having had a sleep for an hour in the afternoon before the talk, as I need to have these days. It's back to the old preparing for games. I was sleep in the afternoon. And as I walked into the function place in Chippenham, still 0-0, just after half time. And as I walked through the door, Son scored that magnificent goal.
Wonderful, wasn't it?
And then it went better from there. Yeah. So delighted with it. I have memories of Preston in the past. I have to look it up, by the way. And on October the 27th, 1971, we played Preston North End at home in the League Cup. We drew 1-1, which would have been a disappointing result. So we went to Preston some weeks later and won 2-1 in the replay. And Perryman and Chivers scored. Now, that is not usual for Perryman to score, as we all know. And even more unusual, I scored a header from the edge of the box. How it happened, who's going to take the opposite to credit? Who's going to take the blame from a Preston North End point of view? Who was the goalkeeper that got beat by a Steve Perryman header?
Was it a deliberate header? Was it meant to be a knockdown to someone?
It was a header. So
it was a deliberate.
I think it might have been a corner mistaken that ended up with me on the edge of the box, and everyone just froze.
Wow.
Anyway, so but delighted they got through. Fantastic. You know, we need something to cheer, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Theo, I'm assuming you are, but I'd ask, again, people who never heard us before, listening on the Steve Perryman podcast, are you one of these people that would rather win the FA Cup than finish top 4?
Oh,
surely
God.
you're one of these people. Some people go, oh no, top 4's more important. Sod the money, sod the all what it means to UEFA points and all that. Who cares if you're a fan? It's all about days out, surely. It's all about memories that you remember. We're going to talk about some memories about in this book in a minute. Surely that's more important.
I've always found that question incredibly difficult, because you say all that. I agree with you, and we desperately need a day out and some glory. I can't believe how long it's been. I mean, it's incredible. Someone said to us in 91 as we walked away from Wembley, it'll be 2023. You still won't have won the FA Cup again. We'd been absolutely gobsmacked. But it's not about the money and stuff. It's about the whole season, and the whole identity of the club has changed if you're in the Champions League. So you've got the Champions League to look forward to. It's a bit like, I always think Champions League is a bit like promotion. You know, there's the Premier League, and then there's the Champions League. People talk about playoffs being the biggest games because if you win a playoff, the whole of your next season is improved, and it's the same getting in the Champions League. So I don't know. I'm not as clear cut as you about that. I'm sitting on the fence here, Mike. I'm sitting on the fence.
But you are. But I mean, Julie, from a fan's perspective, you know, and we've all been going for, God, if we had all the years together, we've all been going. It'd be quite staggering. Surely, and again, the fact you've written the official biography of Tottenham Hotspur, when you're sitting there and you get a season, you go, well, this is going to be easy. This writes itself. We won something this season. Surely it's more important from a fan's perspective to have these memories of these wonderful games we're going to talk about later, than getting into a group stage, scraping through, going out probably in the last 32. Everyone forgets about it years on. Surely from a fan's perspective, I know financially it means more. And also, what's your take on that, Julie, before we ask Steve?
Well, I think for me, the Champions League it's just prolonged pain, because you start all hopeful and then, you worry about getting through the group stage and then, I've just this season, all I want really is just a big shiny trophy like we had in the past, the dim and distant past. There's a lot of Spurs fans who weren't born when we last won the FA Cup.
Exactly.
I've always loved the FA Cup anyway, because it's just such a grand competition. I can remember the first time I ever saw the FA Cup. They had it on display somewhere, and I was at some press do, and I can remember walking around it and looking at all those sort of names engraved on the trophy and seeing the name of your club on the trophy. It's just so important to me. Honestly, I can see all the economic argument for the Champions League, but it does go on, doesn't it? I mean, and the big disappointment in Pochettino's regime, that semi-final and what happened afterwards. And I just thought, is that how it's always going to be? Can't we just win an FA Cup? Please, please.
Steve, as a player, do you think modern players, I know modern players don't go to the pub anymore after the game, but for the sake of this argument, let's say they did. Do you think modern players would be talking to, mates who play for other teams? Do you think they get the old, show us your medals? Or do you think it's more like, hey, we're Champions League season in, season out? Surely a professional football, it's still about what you've actually tangible medals in front of you than, we got into the group stages in 2023.
Easy answer for me, because I don't have to sign the money check for players' wages and stuff. So I'm not interested in the money either. I'm interested in the glory that you gain by winning a trophy. And I've had 2 eras of somewhat success at Tottenham, early 70s, early 80s. It all springs and stems from the first trophy. You go into the next season, more confidence, the crowd believe in you, you believe in your own club, the owners, not that we knew who they were, believe in you. Yeah, they believe in you a bit more, because you've actually got something solid in front of you. And therefore, I think an FA Cup win this year, great last year, because we were out of the FA Cup, we were out of everything. And can we finish 4th? And then once we put all our effort into that, we did. Fantastic. That's the best way to get Champions League, when there's nothing else left.
Yeah.
While we're in the FA Cup, let's go for the FA Cup, please. Please.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. Well, as we're recording this show, the drawing is in about 45 minutes. So we'll see if we're still talking then, or we'll nip downstairs and have a look. Theo, the other thing that's going on, and as we record this, tomorrow at about 11 p.m, the transfer deadline window closes, and yet again, us Spurs fans are sitting hoping, waiting for something to happen. It's the longest Tottenham transfer saga I can remember in many years, and boy, we've had a few. We are waiting for Pedro Porro to potentially sign. It all looked like it was done and dusted. If you, again, Julie mentioned off air, sitting on social media and all these so-called in the knows, who haven't got a effing clue what's going on unless you're in the room. But what it seems to have been was that the deal was done. We believe that Tottenham wanted to pay in instalments, which in fairness is a normal way of doing deals nowadays, because there's so much money involved. And we believe Lisbon turned around and went, actually, that's going to cost us a bit of money and some kind of banking fees and whatever, and supposedly wanted around another 2.5 million, which Spurs balked at. We believe, as we record this, talks are still ongoing. Porro didn't train today with Sporting Lisbon. Do you still think, Theo, this deal will get over the line, or do you think we balls it up again?
Well, yeah, it seems to be very much in the balance, and we know from experience that the loads of these deals over the years have not got over the line. Where we've been waiting. But sometimes they do get it over the line. It's very hard to say. It's funny then that Levy has long had a reputation for moving the goalposts just before a deal is done and making a last minute change in his for his own benefit. And it seems like he may have been played at his own game here. If it is only 2.5 million, then of course, as fans, everyone's saying it's just 2.5 million.
We'll have a whip round.
Yeah, for Christ, 2.5 million now. I mean, what's the problem? But then I guess you think, well, if you just say, well, all right, it's only 2.5 million, they could keep saying it. Give us another 2.5 million till 11 o'clock tomorrow night until they.
But the player wants to go. Apparently, the player waved goodbye. Helps. They played in the League Cup final here. Yeah, I watched against Porto.
You see that shot he had that hit the bar in that game? Incredible shot from right outside the area, hit the bar. Yeah. But that obviously helps. But again, the trouble with these things is no one wants to be. Everyone's acting tough, aren't they? Levy is like the sort of the most feared gunslinger in town when it comes to the transfer window. But that sometimes, he doesn't get his own way, and I think that he walks in with his reputation, and they almost sometimes clubs dig their heels in all the more because they think, well, this guy thinks he's going to get one over on us, and we're not going to be like that. I think Lisbon, from what I understand, might have a bit of a reputation for being pretty tricky themselves in the old transfer market. I mean, maybe they think they're holding the cards. The fans have already, they only have to look at Twitter. All of the Spurs fans they're desperate for him to go. They've more or less decided he's coming. The player wants to go. The club, Tottenham want him. So what's to stop them asking for a bit more money? I think we'll probably get it if we ask for a bit more. Why don't we get them to pay the admin fees? They're bound to do it. Yeah,
Julie, is there frustration amongst Tottenham fans that these transfer windows open a certain date? There was the World Cup as well. Again, we seem to be the only club that doesn't get his business done early. I think the last big name I remember coming to Tottenham, and it was announced at the end of the season he was coming the next season, was Luka Modric. That was like, that was like done very early on. He was quite young and it was done. We seem to wait to get these sort of last minute deals over the line. And then when something goes wrong, we're now scrabbling around. If it does not happen, there's no time to get someone else because no other names seem to be coming out plan B as ever. Is that the frustration that most of us have?
Something just went through my mind. Do you remember the AVB regime?
Sadly, yes.
Yeah, when they were trying to sign, was it Moutinho?
Yeah.
And I can remember that when everybody was just sort of checking on early Twitter by the minute, every 5 minutes, refreshing. And it just, I think, the clock just wound down. I can just remember the special hell of it. And I'm just thinking then, this only at Tottenham. Only in Tottenham does this happen. As you say, a serious club really gets its business done early. I mean, you look what's been going on over the last few weeks. I think that when Kulusevski and Bentancur came in the last January window, that seemed very unusual for Tottenham because it was also near the end.
It was also near the end of that window as well. And a lot of fans at the time thought, oh, God, they couldn't get anyone. They've gone back to Juventus, Paratici.
Well,
He's got two players for the bench. I mean, it turned out to be a masterstroke. But again, that was also very last minute.
I can't follow that up, Mike.
No, well, I'm just saying, Steve, I mean, you're obviously director of football at Exeter. So you've done probably many, probably not for this kind of money at Exeter, but, knock a few knots off, Absolutely. But what's you've been in these rooms last minute deadline. Give your perspective from a club's point of view when you're trying to get a deal done and someone tries to pull a fast one. What do you do?
I don't think we paid money once in a window. We took money because we were a selling club, obviously. So we were never quite in that position. And there's no point hanging on right to the end because from our point of view of needing the money, if it falls through at the last minute because we tried to be too clever, you're going to lose it. So, I think back to the early 70s when Bill Nick missed our last game away at Stoke, when if we won, we'd have finished third. It didn't really matter then, but it mattered to us, the players, because we were on position money. And Eddie went one direction, Bill Nick went the other. Bill eventually signed Ralph Coates in a service area car park. And unfortunately, it got out later that Ralph was Bill's wife's favourite player.
That's right.
So you can imagine what happened every time Ralph got picked in front of somebody else. It was, well, Darky's picking the team.
Yeah.
Bushy. So, but yeah, I mean, do it early. But Spurs was a club then that people wanted to join, weren't they? And we haven't quite got the same shine on us or the same gloss on us that we had under Bill Nick's day, and that was created by winning trophies that we come back to. You know, I remember Ozzy going to Brazil to speak to Aldair when he was manager. The club weren't impressed with the price of the air ticket, by the way. But met Aldair in a hotel restaurant, and Aldair said, "When was the last time your club won the championship?" And I'm impressed that Ozzy knew 61.
Mm-hmm.
And he walked out.
Really?
Said,
Wow.
"No, not for me."
Wow. There you are.
So
Wow.
you need to have done something. This is what I'm saying. The more it doesn't happen for us, the worse it gets. But it might be, Mike.
What?
When you sat in Portugal, that the Portuguese are. It's one of my favourite places in the world, by the way. Perhaps we shouldn't deal with anyone living in Portugal.
Yeah, well, I mean, in fairness, Sporting Lisbon have sold some big players at the beginning of the season. They don't really need the money. They're not, all these clubs can't obviously pay what Premier League clubs do, but they've sold players. So they're a bit like, that's why they wanted the release clause. And we believe that Tottenham was sort of skirting around with that figure, but, finally went, we're going to meet the release clause. Yeah. Do this a month ago. Just get on with it. Show a bit of class and go, that's the release clause, triggered, here he comes. You
can't win every deal. That's the point.
No, of course.
You cannot be the victor in every single deal. And I think that's probably what we want to be.
Yeah, I mean, and Theo, obviously so far, Danjuma, who scored in his debut, looked lively. He's come in. Brian Gill has gone back to Seville on loan. The team we bought him from, we've now given him back to the club we bought him from on loan, which I always find a little bit bizarre. It's even with Porro coming in, again, it's a very underwhelming transfer window, isn't it, Theo?
It is really, but January is hard to pick up players, as we all know, and unless you're Chelsea, and you will literally pay anything, literally anything. They're threatening to break the British record today to get the Argentinian out of Benfica. So unless you're Chelsea, you're going to struggle. Everyone struggles to get players. There are some clubs that haven't bought anyone. You've always got to try and take a step back and look at what everyone else is doing. So it's a bitty window. I agree. But Porro would be great because he's so massively on brief. He's exactly precisely what we require, a really proper, dynamic, attacking, effective right wing back. And Danjuma looks like a little bit of an underwhelming signing, given that he had 2 years at Bournemouth and no one can remember anything about it. But he, having said that, he's obviously done quite well in a Villarreal shirt in the Champions League as well. Come to that. So, and he looked okay. He looks hungry. Yes. He looked like he really wanted to. He
wanted the ball.
Saturday.
He actually wanted the ball. He wasn't hiding for the ball,
which is great. It's a shame a bit about Brian Gill, but the really good news about that is that they've only loaned him and there's no arrangement for them to buy him, because I think in the games that he has played purely out of necessity, he's actually started to look quite good, hasn't he, recently? And
he had a little run. He had a little run.
He had a couple of games. He looked good. And then suddenly he wasn't even getting on the bench again. And you just think, I don't know. I reckon you give him a few games. I mean, he caused problems in a couple of those games that he played. I like him. So I'm really relieved that he's not going anywhere long term.
If there was any problem with him, Brian Gill, whatever it's called, it was because he was over trying.
Yeah.
And when you've struggled to get some minutes, that's what you tend to do. So I don't see it as any bad thing when a player is over trying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good point. Well, look, let's go to a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about this extraordinary book that Julie and Steve have put together, 81. Back in 1 minute. And we're back from the break. Just to remind those of you on the Spurs Show and also the Steve Perryman podcast, you're welcome, very, very welcome. Every month, the Spurs Show does a monthly event, a little live event. Last week, we had Jerry Armstrong with us. Brilliant, brilliant show. That is out on Friday. Great, great stories. What a raconteur he is. We've got another one, February the 22nd, with Neil Razor-Ruddock. To get a season ticket, go to season.spursshow.net. I think it's a tenner a month. You and a couple of mates can come to all our events. There's also a couple of tickets for non-season ticket holders. There'll be a link in the description, or go to biletto.co.uk, type in Spurs Show Live, and it should come out. For those of you who want more of this every day for premium content, including a daily news show, ex-player interviews, original documentary series on Spurs, go to patreon.com/Spurs Show and support our show in the process. And just a little plug for those of you going out to Milan on February the 14th. There's a Spurs supporting comedy night at lunchtime in Milan. Under the Lights Comedy Club, 12:30 to 2:30, with some stand-up comics, all Spurs fans. Only £12 in advance. Go to tickettailor.com or follow Under the Lights Comedy on Instagram or UTL Comedy on Twitter to get more details. So before you start necking it in Milan, go and have something to eat, bowl of pasta, listen to some comedy, and hopefully there's no comedy on the pitch later on that night. So go and check that out and support some fellow Spurs fans. Right, Julie, when you called, I think me and Theo are both actually in this book. We were both interviewed, I believe, which was really, really nice of you. Julie and Steve, how did this book come about? Was it because someone said, it's 40-year anniversary coming up when this book was written, came out last year. How did it all come about?
Well, I wasn't even that clever thinking about anniversaries. I just thought...
I'm sure the publisher was. The publisher went, look it up. 40 years, that will do.
Well, Steve and I have been sort of chatting for a while about, maybe getting a book together, and I don't know. I just was sort of bimbling about my office one day, and I suddenly started thinking about the 81 FA Cup. And of course, I was thinking about that run of Ricky's at the end. And I just thought, I'd like to write a whole book about that. And there we went. That was it. Steve liked the idea. And it was just, from a writer's point of view, I mean, all I had to do was listen to Steve. Basically, it's the easiest book I've ever written, because you just sort of ask him something, and half an hour later you got your whole story. The whole thing about the book is that it just had, for a writer, it had a proper narrative, not just the match stage by stage, but the background. Steve having gone into led the team into relegation. That was his sort of great dream, to bring us back to glory. And so, what a fantastic sort of arc for a story. God, that sounds really pompous, but it just works so well because Steve is so brilliant to work with. As I say, you just sort of put Zoom on and ask him something, and then you go away and make a cup of coffee or something, and he's told you the whole story.
Yeah. My perspective of the FA Cup thing, this 81, was I was 5 when I started going to Spurs in the sort of 73. So we hadn't won it since 1967. As a kid, 14 years is like a lifetime. I remember growing up in the mid-late 70s, and we had a terrible run. We had a run where we kept getting knocked out in the third round. Yep. All my mates who are Arsenal fans, Liverpool, United were winning it. It's laughable now that we haven't won it since 1991. I mean, that's almost 2 generations now haven't seen us lift it. But it really felt like an eternity since we'd won it. Obviously, Steve, you've been at the club a while. Obviously, you mentioned the two successful teams. Was it a source of frustration as much for you then that we hadn't got there for so long?
Yeah, Julie mentioned it. I led us into relegation in the mid to late 70s. And remember, I joined in 67. And I think the fact that Spurs won the cup final against Chelsea sort of edged it their way. It wasn't the deciding factor by any means, but actually, in a way, it was, because I've told you the story before. Bill Nicholson said to me, walking across the car park to attend an evening training session, and he walked around the other corner, and now we're looking at each other, and he said, "Steve, are you going to sign for us or not?" Well, yeah. But he said, because if you don't, you're not getting a cup final ticket. Whereas from Chelsea, I was getting my dad, my mum, my two brothers, chauffeur-driven car. I was being taken to the team hotel. I was on the team bus driven to Wembley. I was going to attend the after-match function, etc. So why did I sign for Bill Nick? I don't know. But anyway, so when I joined them in the summer, there was this glow of having won a trophy. And they didn't need a glow, actually, because, Greaves, Mackay, Jennings, Knowles, England. Wow. So what a group of people. And then I'd been watching the FA Cup finals, born 51, so I was probably knowing what I was watching after about 57, 58. And I remember Notts Forest winning against somebody 2-1. Dwight scored. Luton beat Luton, and you could dream of that. Would that ever happen to me, picking that cup up? And yet you're not even a footballer. Anyway, all of a sudden you are a footballer. You're playing for a famous club, and they've won the FA Cup. And well, who knows? I never thought that I wasn't going to make it. That's the point. So if I do make it, I'm going to be part of this FA Cup tradition with Tottenham. And you know what happened as well? We lost Pat to our rivals. Pat ended up being in 3 cup finals. And I'm thinking, wow, does that mean I have to leave to get to a cup final? And then, bosh, it happened that Keith got his act together with signing players, especially Archibald and Crooks, having signed the Argentinians, of course, in 78, and they needed a few seasons to settle down. But then, Galvin pops his head up and Roberts pops his head up, and all of a sudden we've got a unit. And I'm looking at our league position. We finished 10th that year. So we weren't over impressive. But probably since all those players come in together, and I'd obviously learned a bit about captaincy by that time. And Glenn, of course, was the main player, but, had some very good lieutenants around him. And we had this goal machine at the front. And all of a sudden, it looked like a possibility. And I remember, and it's in the book, getting drawn in the quarterfinal against Exeter City. And it could have been a lot of tougher games than that, although it turned out to be tough. And we thought, you know what, we got a chance of this. And it went from there.
Yeah. Theo, I mean, I mentioned there before that we had a run of getting knocked out the third round. We then got a bit close. I remember, I think it was maybe in 80, we got to the quarterfinal against United. The season I thought we were going to do it, and I remember this game vividly, was the one when Liverpool did us in the quarterfinal. Theo McDermott, Ozzy was near the corner flag, played it to McDermott, flicked it up, great volley past Barry Daines. And I really thought we were going to win that day. We played well that day as well, but that... Yeah. Did you think it was going to happen, Theo, as a fan, witnessing these sort of nearly moments?
No, I was like you, and I was like Steve, in as much as I always watched the cup final when I was a kid. It was the biggest day of the year, bar. Only Christmas really competed. Christmas and your birthday competed with the cup final, and that's when your team wasn't in it because it was such a massive day. You know, you got up in the morning so excited. You'd bought the Evening Standard special edition. You know, you had that. And you got up and the coverage started early in the morning. It was the most exciting thing in the world. You almost didn't dare imagine what it'd be like if your own team got there, if Spurs got there. And because of the age we were, you and I, Mike, we didn't quite remember our team ever being in the cup final. Obviously, we knew that it happened in history. But I mean, so yeah, you didn't dare dream of it. And of course, that team, I mean, as Steve says, the final pieces in the puzzle were, of course, Crooks and Archibald. I remember going to those first games that season and watching them in front of that majestic midfield, you know, and just thinking, I mean, I was 14 years of age, but I'm thinking to myself, wow, I'm only 14. I'm no expert, but I think we're a pretty special team here. And everyone said, of course, about Tottenham, they're a cup team. I mean, I don't know what that was based on at that point because we hadn't won a cup for quite a while, but there'll be a cup team. They're not there. They won't win the league, but they're a cup team. And you just started to think, but you didn't dare dream until you got there. And even then, I mean, very nerve-wracking experience, obviously. But I mean, to me, 81. I'm looking at this book. I've got it in front of me here. It's one of the most beautiful.
It's an incredible book. Beautiful. It's an incredible book. If we haven't got it, trust us here. Just put up the money. I mean, you're going to get
the first thing you notice about it is the exquisite design. It's Doug Cheeseman, isn't it? The designer. He's such a great designer.
Yeah.
This book is so beautifully done. It's perfect. Do you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of my favourite ever Tottenham shirt, which actually features on this cover. My favourite ever Tottenham shirt is the 81 Cup Final shirt. And the reason I love it is its simplicity. And it's got that beautiful V-neck with just the one stripe and then the badge right in the middle.
Slight shine to it as well. There's a slight shine.
A little sheen, which we hadn't really seen up to that point very much.
No, it was the start of shiny shirts.
Yeah, and it's understated, its design. It's graphic understatement. And you look at the cover of this book and it's just got it's got an 8 and a 1 and they're cut out to reveal the figures on the left-hand side of Stevie Perryman and on the right-hand side of Ricky Villa. And then just at the bottom, right in the middle, just like it was of the shirt, is just the simple badge. No words, no typography, and it just says everything. It's a beautiful thing, this book. It's a beautiful, what we used to call a coffee table book, is what it seems in appearance. But you get your cake and eat it because it's a coffee table book with loads of great prose in it, and the whole story told in great detail. And I told Julie this, and I said the night we won that cup, I got home. The next day, I was exhausted, and my dad came round. My parents were estranged, but he came round for some reason or other. He said, "Did you go to that game yesterday?" I said, "Yes, I was there." He said, "Oh, what was it like?" And I said, "It was the best night of my life." Oh. And he said, "Oh dear."
You haven't lived much of a life.
Yeah, that's what he was basically saying. Yeah. But you know what? I look back on it, and I think it's still right up there. It is right up there.
Yeah.
For me.
I remember. We'll obviously talk about Highbury, but I remember going. Obviously, it was the Exeter game. Steve was right. It was very cagey and a tough game against Exeter. Didn't Miller and Roberts score? Both our defenders scored in the end, which is very unusual. But I remember going up to Hillsborough, which is probably the furthest I'd ever travelled to see Tottenham play. I was 13, 14. I remember sitting there on the side of the ground when Clive Thomas gave the penalty for Kenny Hibbert against Hoddle. And you could see where I was, that Hoddle absolutely touched the ball. It was a few minutes to go. Hibbert went over. And I burst out crying. I was like, I can't believe it's so close again. And it's happened. And then, but in looking back, I'm glad it happened, because if it didn't happen, we wouldn't have had that night at Highbury. Which, can you imagine now, a cup semi-final going down the road? There was hardly any Wolves fans there. They had a bit of the clock end, I think half the clock end. So it was easily three sides all Tottenham. What was that like, Steve, coming out for probably the warm-up? And just coming to this ground, obviously you knew so well, obviously, and now it's just all Tottenham there. It must have been giving you players such a lift.
On the bus ride home after Hillsborough, we were absolutely convinced that we were going to win. There was no doubt. And that's how we played. The fact that Andy Gray was not in the team didn't hurt our chances, did it? And so the confidence just grew. And now you're on the stage of our neighbours. By the way, I went to a function the other night listening to Charlie George, and he never mentioned our name once. And when he come to tell a story about us, he said, Stevie's team. And that's what it means.
Yeah.
That's what it meant to get through that important game, to get back on the real stage. It's all right being a good team. It's all right showing improvements in this way and that way. But actually, you've got to get on the stage first. And that was what we did on that evening. And when I look at those goals, I am so proud of how we played that night. And backed by, talk about a crowd giving you energy. In Japan, they talk about the crowd giving power to your legs. Wow, they gave us power that night.
I mean, you've stood alongside in many games, Mr. Glenn Hoddle, and watched his range of passing. Would you put that pass for the second goal for Garth Crooks, where he was quite deep in his own half, certainly halfway in our half, the way he played that ball, whereby Garth Crooks, who, you know, got going, didn't have to break his stride. Would you say, Steve, that was probably a pass that led to a goal as well? It's such an important goal.
Sure.
That's got to be up there as one of the greatest passes of all time, surely.
I go back to an Aussie quote. Some people give you the ball, it's round, and some people give you the ball and it's a cube, meaning one you can work with and one you can't work with. Glenn Hoddle played that perfectly. The pace, the direction, everything, the manner in which he did it, he did it like an artist, playing it through. And then whenever I watch it on video, I'm convinced that they've speeded up the film, because Garth was like a rat up a drain pipe, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Whoosh!
Absolutely.
And to finish it, wow.
Yeah. I mean, the modern player now would have gone too early. It would be, oh, God, he's offside or something. It's gone too early. You're like, oh, no. Yeah. You know.
Well, that's the great thing about, if you're a front man playing with Glenn Hoddle, you go with the knowledge that it's probably going to be played where you want it, when you want it. And that applied to that pass. So fantastic. Great. I loved it. And Ricky's goal to finish it off. Wow. And probably the most important goal that night was Garth's first one, because that just calms any nerves. And I don't think we had nerves that night, but if anyone did, that was calmed it all down.
Yeah. When you did the book, Steve, did you? I mean, again, you played obviously the most games ever for Tottenham Hotspur. Were there games that you had to sort of go back and look at again? I mean, I struggled with the third round. First and the replay QPR. I had no memory of that. What happened there? Did you have to look back and sort of go, or do you generally remember that whole run?
Some games stand out, obviously, and QPR stood out that we were very poor on that day, very poor, and sort of luckily got a draw. And you know, there's always a bit of luck in winning any trophy, and QPR was that matter of fact. So, I actually, your podcast, I did a podcast.
We did
for you.
Lockdown when that's right.
Yeah.
Oh,
That didn't do my memory any harm.
That's right. Yeah, we did. It's now out there. If you go and search it, we went round by round with all the commentary and the audio. Yes.
Julie asked you, would you send it to me?
Yes, that's right.
Which you did.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
So, you know, people think lots of different things about podcasts, but I'm telling you, they've got some relevance just to keep it fresh in your mind. So that just eked out a bit more knowledge.
Did the players, because I think the other semi-final, wasn't it Ipswich, who were a very good team? Was it Ipswich, Man City? Did you, did the players sort of want one or the other? Presumably you wanted Man City over.
We desperate for Man City.
There you are.
Desperate.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Ipswich were a very, very good team.
Yeah.
They, there wasn't a weakness in the Ipswich team. So we'd always had trouble with them. So we needed Man City to get through, and yet, I think you would all remember that the final was sort of billed as the footballers against the workers.
And the 100th cup final as well, wasn't it? The Centenary?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But you know, that doesn't matter whether you're the footballers or not. If you don't work as strong as the workers, your ability may not stand out, and that's the way it worked that game. So probably gone there too early, that one.
Yeah, Julie. I remember obviously the first game we were a goal down. Tommy Hutchison, really really good header. Then obviously is that, you know, again. Certain Tottenham fans have belief, whatever. I must admit, I was now sitting there 10 minutes to go, going, I can't see where's this goal coming from. The goal, I admit it, the goal that we scored, and again, anyone chip in if they go, no, I remember one. I have never seen an own goal like that ever, whereby a player is in the wall, runs out of the wall, the ball hits him and he turns, and it goes into the opposite corner. I mean, it's just, if you talk about fate, that your name is on the cup, that split second to me said our name is on the cup.
Well, I have to say, just cruelly, that goal gave me such a laugh. I just sat there. So I didn't know whether I was laughing or crying. It was just so funny. I thought, take that, you bastards. You know, for most of this match. And this is fate. This is fate getting its own back. Yeah, it was. I think probably that Tommy Hutchison own goal is one of those goals which still causes me the greatest satisfaction in all of the football I've ever watched. It was just brilliant, just brilliant.
Yeah, it's amazing. Steve, did you know, again, you talked about after Hillsborough, you knew you were going to win that second game. Was it the same with the FA Cup, with the replay after the first performance on the Saturday? Did you all realise? Yes. Right.
Yeah. And it typifies why we've, in my 17 years in the team, while we've never been a league team, because we take 2 games to beat inferior teams. And it's why, you know, our record has been so good in the UEFA Cup over the years. You know, you might foul in one game, but you got a chance to make it up. And of course, if you foul badly and you lose in a semi-final and it's a one-off game. But of course, when the replay comes, we sort of learned our lessons. We had to learn too many lessons of a poor first half showing of a game, which is not like today, not the first 45 minutes, the first 90 minutes. And we were poor. And you could say that against QPR as well the next year. So with all the talent we had in our team, it still needed to be at the right time, at the right moment, thinking the right thought. We had to get it all right to win a game. And if we weren't quite right, it was the start of a struggle. But we believe we could do it second game, and then you're a goal up early, and yeah, that goes along with a sort of narrative, and then starts to go wrong again. What a goal from the lad from the edge of the box. And then a penalty, which sort of every time I've seen it, it looks like a penalty. I'm sure we didn't think that on the day, but then as Garth stepped up, I mean, Garth kept stepping up, didn't he? Archie really didn't do it on the big stage, did he?
Well, he did it in the League Cup final the next year, didn't he? We took the lead against Liverpool, an early goal.
Of course he did.
The 81.
Yeah.
You know, no. Well, it's an incredible book, and for those of you. For those of you who know VSP, we mentioned Doug Cheeseman, Incredible Design. For those of you who've got some of these other coffee table books that VSP have done in the past, go and get it. As I said, go to shop.visionsp.co.uk, put in TSS, and you get 20% off this book. And while you're at it, get the Spurs shirt, get Steve Perryman of Spurs Forever, get the official biography of Tottenham Hotspur. Go crazy. We're recording this. It's into the mud. It's payday. Most of you just got paid. Come on. Splash out. Go crazy. Yeah. So go and do that. And Thank you so much, Steve and
Pleasure.
Julie, for coming on.
Pleasure.
Lovely to see you.
Julie,
Yeah.
Julie, have you been paid yet?
No,
Don't answer that. Don't answer.
Talk later. We'll be back next week. I think on Friday, the show we did with Jerry Armstrong will come out on Friday. Brilliant stories there and well worth listening. Next week, we're joined by Katie Owen, Marcus Buckland and Sean Cook. Until then, Theo, thank you so much. Steve, thank you so much. Julie,
Pleasure.
you've got 5 minutes to now put on BBC One and see who we got in the fifth round of this season's FA Cup.
I'm
We can
gonna
do
pour
it
myself a
again.
drink.
I'm nominating Bristol City.
Bristol City.
Let's see if you're right. Let's see. And
Yeah.
as long as we don't get Man City away. Oh, God. There we are. Okay, we'll be back next week. Until then, come on, you Spurs.
Hi there again. Hope you enjoyed that. They were three professionals at the podcast game that I was with during that podcast, and delighted to be so. I probably didn't make enough fuss of how important Julie Welch was to that book. She did all the hard graft. Okay, I did the talking and supplying the words, and that's not a problem for me at any stage, especially about a good moment in my career, our career. So very special year, and hope you enjoyed it. So just want to give you a clue as to the next podcast. We're hoping that Harry Kane is going to break Jimmy Greaves' Spurs goal scoring record, in which case I have the honour and the privilege of talking to Mr. Alex Inglethorpe. Alex was Harry's group, a very good group of young players. He was in charge of them in their YTS days, youth team days. So a lot of people claim to help make that group of people, but I think Alex stands tall in that department, and I know Harry respects what he did for him. So Alex is going to do the next podcast when Harry breaks that record. So that should be one that you want to look forward to. And lastly, just to want to say good luck to Steve Borthwick, the new head coach of the England rugby team. The Six Nations starts at the weekend, and I think we're taking on Scotland. So it'll be a big game for him, his first game in charge. And we wish you all the best, Steve. And do the job. Do the job. So, thanks for listening. And of course, again, come on, you Spurs. Good luck.